For our project, Sam and I decided to ask the question, is education the great equalizer?
After doing a lot of research, we decided to interview someone.
To do so, Sam and I decided to interview his father, David Spiegelman, who teaches history at a middle school in the inner city.
Let's hear what he has to say.
Hi, my name is David Spiegelman. I am a 7th grade public school teacher. I teach English and history, and I've been doing it for 21 years.
Our first question from Mr. Spiegelman was, in your opinion, what do you think is the importance of education?
I think that the main thing education should teach people is how to think critically and for themselves, not just to learn a bunch of facts or dates or memorize things, although that has its place, but to be able to analyze situations and come up with solutions to problems.
The next question we asked was, how do you think a good education affects someone outside of school?
Let's see, I think if people have a good education and they're able to think critically and analyze problems, then I think it allows them to sort of understand other cultures by lowering their fear and lack of understanding. I think fear comes from not understanding people and cultures, and then that leads to other things like violence, wars, misunderstanding. So if you're able to think critically because you've been educated, then that level of fear and misunderstanding is lowered, and you're able to appreciate other cultures, other places better. Open up your mind to a bigger worldview.
The next question we decided to ask was, does an absence of education or a lack thereof feed into things like violence or terrorism?
I think if your educational system is not as strong as, say, it is in first world countries, that reduces the number of options and choices for people. So if you let's say you don't even have to go to school, or you can't go to school because you have to support your family, then your opportunities are limited. And add that to what I said earlier about being afraid or having fear and misunderstanding of other cultures, and you're more likely to do things that are unhealthy or bad for you, especially when you're young, when you're impressionable.
We then asked, how do you think having a bad education system affects a country's social status and economy?
When there isn't a strong educational system, the wealthy will probably be the only people that have access to that, so that creates more of this like wealth and achievement gap, and which means you do not have as many people in the workforce, which does not help an economy grow. And then you have that chain reaction where if people don't have a strong economy, they don't have jobs, there's less opportunity for them, and they start looking for other ways to make themselves fulfilled doing things that are not good for them, whether it be terrorism or drugs.
Then we asked if he thought that there was a relationship between the social gap in individual countries and the social gap between countries.
Yeah, absolutely. Like in this country, for example, like when you guys are about to go to college, right? But there are plenty of kids who do not have that infrastructure, that kind of opportunity. Same is true for countries. Yeah, absolutely. If it's just this gap of wealth where the rich countries get richer, the poorer countries get poorer, and the rich countries get richer oftentimes by exploiting the poor countries. But if you look at our own country, we are kind of a microcosm of that as well. We have a lot of people in this country who are living below the poverty line, right? But our country does not want to support them necessarily because we think that's sort of a form of socialism, and those people should be able to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and make their own way, just like the American dream. But what people don't realize is that everyone in the American dream had help from somebody else. Anyone who was an immigrant came to this country, I don't think there's hardly any of them that did it by themselves. They always had people helping them. But I think also in this country, depending on what race you are automatically at a disadvantage. So we have those same issues going on in this country with a class system of race that other countries do.
We then asked, what do you think is the most effective way to aid other countries?
I think sending them aid should be oftentimes in the form of supporting their educational system. Building schools, hiring teachers, training teachers. The training of teachers is a big one. And then paying them a salary that they can have a living wage, afford to have a family and a house.
Next we asked, what would happen if we put a first world education system into a third world country?
If third world countries were willing to accept it, and it wasn't contrary to their cultural beliefs, that it could have a positive impact. Have some of the outcomes we talked about earlier, lowering that fear factor, having a greater understanding of different cultures, different religions.
Thank you.